Okay, welcome to this video series all about activity 6 of the unit 2 databases, or formerly known as the unit 2 creating systems to manage information BTech unit as part of the BTech IT course. As part of this series, I'm going to show you how you can complete activity 6, the two forms that you need to create, and also how you can save the evidence for activity 6 correctly. On this video, I'm going to only show you how to create the first form of activity 6. I'm not going to show you 3 different examples as I did with activity 3, because for the first form from activity 6, it's the same type of skill that is required to be able to create the first form required on activity 6. So without wasting more time, I'm going to open the paper and read the instructions. So these are important notes that you need to take note of. So they tell you here, the structure of the tables provided should not be changed in any way. Do not add validation, do not change data types. You only be required to use TBL staff and TBL job role. What they mean by this part is, when you go to your learner files and you open the part B database file required for you to do activity 6, they don't want you to go to the design view of the tables that they have created, and they don't want you changing the data types or adding validation rules to the table structures that they've already created. And they tell you here, for the two forms that you need to create, these are the only two tables that you need to use when you're creating the two forms. So here they tell you an input form to add a member of staff, an input form to check staff availability. For activity 6A, this is not one form. You don't do this using one form. These are two different forms required for activity 6. The first form is an input form to add a member of staff. Then the second form is an input form to check for staff availability. As I told you, I'm working on showing you how to create the first form required for activity 6, which is this one. So whenever they mention for the first form that you create for activity 6, and they tell you an input form to add a member of staff, that means there's a table that already exists that has details of members of staff. So if I navigate here, we can see that said table. So when I'm creating an input form to add a member of staff, they want me to create a form so that instead of adding data manually using a form like this, I should be able to use an input form to add data to this table if I want to add a new member of staff. That's what they want me to do. So when I create an input form to add a member of staff, I need to check the staff table, and I will need to make sure that my form will have all these fields. If there's some missing, that means when I'm adding a new member of staff, there's going to be details that are missing. If the instruction here was an input form to add a job role, I would need to make sure my input form has all these different fields. Otherwise, if I was adding a new job role, it would be an incomplete record, as it would be missing information. This is a common mistake that students make, that they'll read here where it says the staff member's surname should be present, the user should be able to select the staff member's job role, the user should be able to select the staff member's availability. The common mistake that students will make is, because only 3 of these fields were mentioned when they create their input form for the staff table, they're only going to include the surname, the availability, and the job role ID, which is absolutely incorrect. The instruction is an input form to add a member of staff. So to add a member of staff in the staff table, all these fields need to be present. So now we can start. There's different methods how you can create a form. From experience, this is the easiest way for students. You select the Create tab and you go to Blank Form. I like to encourage students to rename their form before starting anything. Now I'm going to add a title. So I'm going to add an appropriate title based on what the form is going to do. So I select the label icon. If you hover over long enough, you'll be able to see what the icon does. Okay, so I'm going to name it add staff members. So I need to make this to look more like a title, so I'll go to property sheets, then I'll look for the font option, then I'll look for font size. I'll make this 22 and I'm going to make it bold. You also need to provide instructions on how the form should be used. You do get marks for this and you do lose marks for not doing this. So here I just wanted a label. So I'll type in instructions to add a new member of staff. Please complete the fields with an asterisk. If you just do what I did here when you're typing out your instructions, that is perfectly fine. So I'm going to change the font size. So we're going to add an asterisk to mimic what you'd have on a website, where it has that little red star to let you know what you should be typing and fields that you don't need to type. Right, so I'll close this for now. Okay, this is what we have. So I've got my title, I've got my instructions. If I wanted to change the background, I could do that. So the next thing that I'm going to do is to make sure that the form is ready for data entry. To do that, make sure your canvas is selected. So you don't want to select this. This is selected my label. So you know your canvas is selected when you see a yellow line around the border of your whole form, as you can see here. Then you select right click, then you select form properties. Then you navigate to the data tab, then you change data entry from no to yes. And there's a simple way to know if your form is ready for data entry or not, which I'll show you. So the next thing we need to do is to add all the fields from the staff table, so we can add a new member of staff successfully with all the details required. So you'd select add existing fields, you'll click on show all tables, then you'll click on the table that you're creating an input form for, and you're going to double click each and every single field from that table. There you go. So I said there's a simple way to know if a form is ready for data entry or not. If I go back to form properties and I change this data entry to no, if there's an auto number being used and it doesn't say new there, so if I go to staff table, I go to design view, it says auto number here. So whenever an auto number is used, if it doesn't say new here, that means your form is not ready for data entry. That's a simple way to know. Okay, so I've made my form ready for data entry. I've added every single field from the staff table if I wanted to add a new staff member. So the next thing I need to do is to add a button. I go back to form layout design, I go to button, I select record operations, I select save record, I select text. You can rename this, but you don't have to. You could leave it as save record, that's fine. I click on next. Rename your button, please. Naming conventions for buttons is usually BTN. Okay, I'm going to do this. There we go. So I've got my button. So now we need to do the stuff that we actually need to do, so that when we click add, when we're using the form on form view, that we will actually add the staff details that we type in here. Okay, at present when I click add, okay, it's not going to add it. Okay, so we go back to design view. Okay, I'll keep pressing escape. There we go. We go back to layout view where we were before. Now here they mention the user should be able to select. So the idea is, guys, whichever table you're creating an input form for, if they have examples of fields that have repeating data, they want you to replace those fields with combo boxes. Here they have two examples. On the staff table, you've got availability. Staff availability, it's either going to be a Friday, a Saturday, or both days. So they want me to replace this. So instead of the staff members typing in Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, they want me to replace this with a combo box. So I'm going to click this and delete it. I'll go to Form Layout Design. I'll look for combo box. And then I'll select, I will type in the values that I want. The reason why I'm doing this, rather than doing this, going to the staff table and selecting availability, I click next, I click finish. This is the problem that you're going to have when you go to form view. It's going to duplicate Friday, both days, and Saturday. This should only show 3 times, once for each option. That's why I'm going to select the other option. So I'm going to delete this, add my combo box. I will type in the values that I want. So the availability was Friday, Saturday, both days. Then this is very important. It's an important step. You need to select store the value in this field. What that means, in this staff table that you're creating input form for, where do you want the value from this combo box to be stored in the table? So I want this to be stored in availability. I click on next, I click on finish. I can relabel my name by double clicking and rename it. So I can type in select availability, or I could just leave it as availability. So I'm going to add an asterisk. So remember my instructions, I mentioned to add a new member of staff, please complete the fields with an asterisk. So I'll click on label. So I'm only going to add a red star on fields where the user needs to type in something or they need to do something. Staff ID, it's an auto number. They don't get to type in staff ID. So I go to property sheet, I go to format, I look for font color, or even full color will do. I change that to red. So I've created my combo box for availability. Now I need to do for job role. In this table here, this is a foreign key. Why I'm saying it's a foreign key, there's a table called job role. So if I wanted to get the correct job roles, I would go to the job role table. So for my next combo box, I won't use the option to type the values that I want. I'm actually going to extract the values from the job role table because that's where job role ID is created. So I click on next, 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 store the value in this field to let Access know where I want the value from the combo box to be stored in this table. Job role ID. So I can delete this one. Select job role. Okay, so I've got my 2 combo boxes. I'll change that font color to black to match everything else. The next thing that we need to do, so we've got everything that we need here. Is the form ready for data entry? Yes, it is. Have we got all the fields required from the staff table? Yes, we do. For fields that have repeating data, where it says the user should be able to select the job role, the user should be able to select the staff member's availability, job role. Have we got a combo box? Yes, we do. What I might do here is resize this because we don't need that much space now, do we? There we go. So the next thing is to do the macros that when we actually click add, it will add the records to our staff table. So to create macros, you will select your button and you go to build event. You will get rid of everything that's already pre-populated here by doing that. Then you select if. So if we go back on our instructions, the first requirement, the staff member's surname must be present. So I'm going to type in a rule here. I'm going to click on the magic wand here to invoke the builder. Then I'll type in is null. So you see the problem we have here. How do I know which one is the box where staff surname is going to be typed in? This could be the label, this could be the input box. There's no way for me to actually be certain. So please make sure when you're doing either the first form or the second form, you do not skip this step. So you select each of these input boxes and you need to rename them. So I'll select this one. I'll go to property sheet. I'll go on all where it says name. The boxes where the user types in something, I'm going to name it -input. Where they type in the staff surname, I'm going to name it staff surname -input. Where they type in the first name, I'm going to name it staff forename -input. This one, availability -input. This one, job role -input. If you don't rename your input boxes and your macros are correct, you may not get your full marks, because the examiner, when he's marking combo box 62 -input, how is he supposed to know which combo box you're talking about? We're not allowed to guess what you think you're talking about. So now we can go back to build event and get rid of everything that was here and start off where we left off with our first if. I don't want this video to run for 30 minutes. I'll invoke builder, then I'll type in is null. Then here I'm looking for staff surname -input. Right. Then I'll put a closing bracket. Okay, that's what I've done. If I show you Notepad, that's all I've done. Then I'll click on OK. So what are we saying here? We're saying if is null staff surname -input. We're saying if staff surname is input, we want something to happen. So what we want to happen is add a message box. And the message will be, please provide the staff member's surname. This is a warning. You can select either one. You're not going to lose marks for selecting one over the other. Title for this can be surname error. So what this will do, if they try to type all the fields on the form but they leave surname blank, it will not save the record. It will show the message box with the message that we've put here. What other message do they want? The user should be able to select the staff member's job role. We've done that. We've done our combo box. The user should be able to select the staff member's availability. We've done that. We've done the combo box. So whenever they mention here, the user should be able to select. Remember, they didn't say the user should be able to type. They said the user should be able to select. Whenever they mention the user should be able to select, that means you need to provide a drop down or a combo box that will have values that they can select from. Valid data should be appended to the staff table and the save message should display. Okay. A suitable error message should appear where invalid data has been used. So we're going to do validation rule for every single input box where the user needs to type in values. So I'll select add else if. So else if, meaning if it's not just the surname that's empty. So is null. Okay, so not the label. So if they didn't provide the first name, we can add a message box. please provide the staff member's full name or first name. Full name dash error. Okay, and the next two I'll just do for our two combo boxes. At this point you should get the idea, so I'm just going to check that they're empty. So I'll type in is null. Availability dash input, there we go. Message box, please indicate the staff member's availability. The type, it's a warning. Availability dash error. For job role ID, there's two things I can do here. I can do is empty, or I can indicate, because we know job role ID that there was only 3, 1, 2 or 3. So we can say if job role ID is less than 1 or job role ID is greater than 3. We can add a message box. Job role ID must be between 1 and 3. I could also do another one if I wanted to check that job role is not empty. However, for the purpose of this example, we're done. So the last thing we need to do, valid data should be appended to the staff table and a save message should display. So we're going to select add else. Add else meaning if all these other conditions were not triggered, what should happen? So what we want to happen, i.e. if they've provided the surname, if they've provided the first name, if they've selected job availability, if they've selected the job role ID, that's 1 or 3, this is what we want to happen. First, we want a message box that would tell them new staff member added successfully. And this is going to be a success, or information rather. Staff success. Next thing we want to do is to save the record. So there's 3 actions that need to happen if all these other conditions were not triggered. We need a message to tell them the user was added, we need to save the record, and we need to select go to record. And I'll tell you what go to record does. So we'll look for save record. So this will save it to our table. Then the next thing that we need is go to record. And I'll show you what go to record does. So this is my staff table. I'm going to form view. So Jackson, Fred, job availability, I select this, I select this. Let's say if I leave surname empty, our validation works. I type in Jackson. If I try to type in a number here, I type in 5, it tells me job role ID must be between 1 and 3. I select 3. This is what go to record does. If I click OK here, what should happen is if it's added a staff member successfully, or if it's added a new record successfully to the table that you're creating input form for, it should be ready for you to enter the details of the next staff member that you're trying to add. Here, if I wanted to add a new staff member, I would have to manually delete these details myself, then start typing again, which is wrong. So it actually did add that record. And as you can see here, it's not changing staff ID, so there's a risk if we add a new staff member, which I'll show you right here, it's just going to replace this record here. That's the importance of go to record. So if I open staff table, you see it didn't add a new staff member, it just replaced the details. So we'll correct that. we go to layout, we go to build event. So here, go to record, I'm looking for G, go to record, there we go, click save, click close, and that is it, folks. So if I go in form view, I type in Jackson, Fred, I select the availability, I click add, it's ready for me to enter the next details of the next member of staff. So Halo, Jackson, I check the staff table, and you can see it's added those new records. And folks, that is how you complete the first form required for activity 6. Like I said before, it's not necessary for me to show you 3 different examples, because it's the same type of skill that's required, where you need to make sure the form is ready for data entry. You need to add all the fields for the table that you're creating input form for. Then you need to add combo boxes. Whenever they mention, the user should be able to select, or if there's fields that have repeating groups of data. And then the last thing is to create the macros to do the validation for the things that they ask for on the instructions. How to save evidence, that will be a separate video. I'll catch you on the next one.